Now it's time for an exciting discussion into the vast and questionable spectrum of personalization. So, Anne, who's joined us, is the SVP of Product Design at Zalando. Nadia is head of product design at Moonpig, and Andrew is head of design at Real Life Tech. Today we'll be talking everything about personalization. So let's start with this. In your organizations, how do you show to the organization the value that personalization brings in? What are the core metrics that you would measure primarily? Anybody who wants to take the floor can start.
Sure, I'll start. At Real Life Tech, the main ways that we kind of show the value of personalization is all around kind of engagement, it's number one, and conversion. So conversion is, did the personalized content have the desired effect on the user? Did they go on and do the thing that we wanted them to do, which is maybe take a particular action, buy something, check something out? And engagement is kind of part of that story as well, because the more people engage with personalized content, the more we can understand that personalization is actually working, as opposed to kind of the A/B test that we do for people who aren't getting the same type of personalization.
Okay, Anne, would you like to join in?
Yeah, happy to. So at Zalando, we serve over 45 million active customers in Europe as the largest fashion platform. And fashion is something very personal. So explaining to the organization through the research, but also looking at customers' behavior, how personal fashion is a very important aspect of our work. But we don't need to do a lot of convincing, because in the end, creating a unique version for Zalando for every single customer is our goal, being the starting point for fashion, and also deepen customer relationships. And in order to do so, you really need to understand the customer, tailor the experience to their needs that change over time, and then measure accordingly if that has the positive impact for the customer. Which, similar to what Andrew said, is around, not only acquiring customers, see them come once and purchase once, but rather understand the behaviors and patterns over time. So frequency of visit, repurchase rate, but also time spent on our app is something that we observe to make sure it's really the most relevant experience we put in front of them.
Interesting. Nadia, would you like to join in?
Sure, just to kind of like reflect also on what Andrew and Anne have said, very similar. But for us at Moonpig, personalization is really a big part of the product strategy, and we have lots of data about the core job to be done of our customers, which is like about giving the right card and the right gift for a specific occasion. And for those who have seen my presentation, we know that this is not the easiest mission for our customers to be on. Therefore, at Moonpig, for us, it's all about actually, in the first place, the customer experience. Understanding what is the relevant content, what is the relevant products we can offer to our customers, and obviously there is a business side to that, which is conversion and how often customers are coming back to us as a business metrics.
Interesting. So when my next question would pertain to that, like while we talk about stakeholders from a business perspective, here stakeholders are also our customers, right? So when you actually approach them and talk to them, what would you discuss with them to bring about the points that you understand that these are the personalization features that you need to incorporate and build in?
I can start. I would say that, as I said, at Moonpig, there is a very well stakeholders alignment about the importance of personalization. We have done a very extensive research within the organization, within our company, looking at some of those big e-commerce successful organizations that are really well ahead with the personalization of their content for the customers, like Amazon, like YouTube, right? And there is lots of data that was proven, for example, that around 80% of customers are more likely to be switching to a company with a personalized offering for the experience. About 70% of customers say that they would be switching to those brands who offer a better personalized experience. So there is a lot of data talking about the importance of that. And we do see by some of the internal testing that we are doing at Moonpig that whenever we are offering that personalized experience, this definitely has an effect on the frequency of customers coming back, but also in terms of their experience with us.
Okay, so when you talk about the customer's experience with you, like the feedback that you get, how would you share it back with the customers, or would you do user testing to actually test it out and say, this is something we're coming up with, what do you think of?
Yeah, if there's the question to me, we're actually doing this studies at multiple levels, both qualitative as well as quantitative. So at first, and actually maybe even before that, kind of like general discovery, I would say. So we do multiple rounds of researches in order to make sure we are going into the right direction and we are avoiding being creepy, right? I think we're going to discuss this, Pavitra, also going further. But we are starting from a general landscape, general domain analysis. And then whenever we want to validate that we would want to go one direction or another, we would check in with our customers, asking what do they think about a particular direction that we want to undertake. And then we have a bit even more details on top of that. We would go to like user testing or A/B testing to make sure that we have multiple layers of validation, that we are going in the right direction, that we are iterating, that we are growing our functionalities and our features as expected.
Sure. And would you be following the same process within your company as well, or something similar?
Yeah, we have several mechanisms that we apply to balance the different needs, objectives in terms of our group strategy, defining customer promises. So what is it that we want to deliver to our customers when it comes to flawless assortment or inspiration and advice, tailored convenience and fulfillment options. Those are all high-level goals that we agree to. And then we break them further down by applying our product development process and working backwards from the customer. So writing a PR FAQ that has been informed by user research, looking at data, commercial data, customer data, and then working towards a solution that can be looked at in terms of desirability and remarkability, and then gathering feedback similar to the user research mentioned before, where we have a UX carousel, so stakeholders can book time with actual customers to see how they react to certain ideas and flows. But also then we do testing at scale. And then lastly, we gather ongoing customer feedback also through in situ in our app. Again, also qualitative and quantitative sense making, which is really, really important to close the feedback loop. So I do think with all the wealth of data, it's important to keep it simple and make sure we look very concretely at what's the value we create for customers, what are they telling us in return, and how do we continuously improve the customer experience according to their needs.
I love how this is all very customer-centric, and you kind of manage to balance the business with what the customer wants. Andrew, what would your process be at Real Life Tech?
Well, most of our clients are not the end users, but we build products for our clients, and then they have their own end users. So we kind of have to consider both our clients as stakeholders, and then ultimately the user as well. We have a number of kind of user advocates and the design team and the product team, but managing actual kind of clients and those types of stakeholders is a bit of a different beast. Sometimes stakeholders kind of tell you what they think they want, and our job is kind of trying to kind of lay everything out that's coming towards us, both from clients, from users, what our own goals are, and try to find a path through it that's going to solve the problems that are being asked of us to solve. Sometimes the solutions that we come up with are usually not what someone's asked for, but a way to address what's been asked of us in a way that kind of takes it further and solves even a different problem that people may not even realize what they're asking. It's a tricky process. We're a small company and we do a lot of user testing when we can, a lot of stakeholder interviews, a lot of kind of alignment between all the different departments of the business. And usually, you know, when we're trying to solve a big problem, the best way to do that is just to not have any barriers between any of these different groups, so that there's a free share of information, there's honesty and buy-in all along the way and along the process, so that we kind of get to the solution that ultimately will be the best one.
That inter-team communication seems like a dream. There's usually a bit of friction that happens between teams, and some teams really get very possessive, I'd say, with regards to the amount of data that they share with the rest. I like the fact that the way you guys work is very open and very honest and very, very collaborative and communicative. So I've asked you this before, so I'll put it a bit more eloquently this time around. Where would you draw the line between personalization, because there's a lot of tracking, etc., and being creepy? What would the main distinction criteria be? Nadia, would you like to start?
Yeah, for sure. I think there is definitely a fine line between that. Yeah, we are trying to think about making sure that we are always asking for customers kind of like preferences around that, and they're trying to understand what would be going over the line and what would be a good amount of personalization. For example, to give you an example of what we've been discussing as a kind of like a creepy experience is when, for example, auto-rendering content with a personal data that was given by our customers to us previously, like a few months, years, weeks ago, we have been considering at some points, yeah, maybe we will make it easier and use some of the data to kind of like help people to preview the cards, or, you know, show how the pictures could look like at a certain product. But then the conclusion was, okay, this probably will be a way to a step too far. So that would be a kind of like a good example of that creepy experience. So we don't want to, we don't want to overuse any information that customers been giving to us, or maybe we've been collecting. I think a good way to deal with this could be maybe a progressive personalization. We've been thinking about onboarding, so kind of like progressively asking customers about, with every visit, like what kind of maybe offers they would be interested, or like, maybe what features they would like to try with us. So kind of collecting their interest piece by piece, and not kind of like trying to put all of the personalization, all of the cards that we have directly at them, with the same kind of like scaring customers away.
Fascinating. Anne, would you like to, do you have any comments on this one?
Yeah, creating an experience of trust is really, really important to us. So putting the customer in control of their personal data is absolutely a priority and important part of everything we do. And then I would agree with the previous comment made around engaging the customer to play an active role. So thinking about how it can be actually fun to provide some explicit signals around preferences. So one example is, for instance, our brand homes. So the places where individual fashion brands can share their latest campaigns, collections, etc., is something that customers can decide to follow. And from then on, they get notified whenever this brand has something new to offer to them. And by doing so, the experience gets better and better for the customer, but they also see that they're getting rewarded by telling us what they like. So that from then on, no matter where in the customer experience and along the entire customer journey, they see more relevant products, more relevant stories and campaigns offered to them. So that's been quite a very positive element that we see customers picking up very nicely.
That's fascinating because Nadia, you talk about offers and you talk about the brand home. That is such a nice and indirect way of asking the customer's preferences instead of giving them a survey or a questionnaire, or as soon as they open your website or the app to ask them, look, what do you want, what do you want. That's cool. Andrew, would you have any thoughts on this, personalization versus being creepy?
I do. Just to kind of echo what my fellow panelists have said, I mean, really what it comes down to for us is having a kind of clear, concise understanding of the contract between the end user and the technology. So we want to use the end user's data to be able to personalize the experience and provide them something better, something that's going to kind of elevate their normal experience. But we want them to understand exactly what we're doing with that data, why we're doing it, and what value it actually gives them, so that they can buy into this process and know that they're giving us something and then we're giving them something back. And we're not just trying to kind of, slice and dice their data behind the scenes and do kind of creepy stuff. There is also, there's a lot that you can infer from someone's behavioral data inside of an app or a piece of software. But sometimes it's also just good to ask the user what they want and what kind of things they're interested in. And we've just kind of been talking about some clever ways to do that. And I love all of that stuff as well, because it kind of just breaks down this barrier and doesn't seem like the user's just constantly giving without kind of getting something back.
It's like a two-way street.
Yeah.
Two-way love. Okay, we have an audience question for you guys. So what would be the drawbacks of personalization besides all of the business costs?
The drawbacks. Well, some people just want something to do a single thing and they like the way it is and they don't want it to get too clever, right? There's lots of users who may be, I have this experience myself. I've been a long time software user, and sometimes a change in something, while the company has changed, it might think it's for the better. Sometimes users don't want to change. They just want the same thing that they always had and they're happy with that. It's our job basically to kind of, I think, stage that into their lives a bit more. And like I say, give them this context for why it's good, and kind of try to counteract some of that stuff. Also, I mean, I'm sure we can all look at all the tracking data that we get from the different products that we run and see that, there's certain people who just don't opt into these types of data points like push messaging or location, and they don't want these things to be tracked. So it's really on us to be able to have a fallback experience for those people as well.
Interesting. Nadia, I see you unmuted. Would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is that we just previously discussed is managing the comfort levels. And also, Andrew, you just reflected on that a little bit. We have to make sure that we are not scaring people away also with the sudden data that we make look like as a personalization. We have seen quite a lot of examples of that on the internet these days. And there is also a part mentioned in my presentation as well. But another point of kind of like personalization pitfalls could be, at Moonpig, the type of the personalization we are dealing with. So we are also trying not to focus too much on what have customers been doing, what the same customer was doing last year, for example, for ordering a gift or a card for birthday, let's say, of his mom or her mom, but because the people's behaviors change from time to time, what we notice as well. So like if they chose something, a present or a gift, or wrote this type of message last year, doesn't necessarily mean that it's gonna be exactly repeated this year as well. So it's looking into like historical data, but also bringing in other data into the attention to make sure we are still being relevant, and we are looking at also at what other people are doing around the same missions or same occasions. So it's being, it is not easy, the personalization. So it's being smart about this and not necessarily repeating from year to the year what you have done before.
It reminds me of something my mom used to tell me, which is, Andrew, no one ever always or nevers. People aren't always one thing or another. They're a range of different things. We're human and we change all the time, many times in a day. And so trying to kind of be too prescriptive with something might seem a bit overbearing or kind of might turn some people off.
Your mom has very wise words, Andrew.
She does, and I'm only realizing that in my adult life.
What do you think about the drawbacks of personalization?
Yeah, in the fashion context, it's exactly that people change over time. Their interest and fashion needs change. Style is an ever moving target. And I think ideally personalization doesn't just take a snapshot of a person once and never reconsiders it and keeps showing the same things to the customer, but also opens up ideas and imagination about what else could be exciting to wear and to look like. So that's where I think, on one hand, listening to the customer, not just once, but continuously and creating this deep understanding that really adapts over time and becomes more and more relevant. Also knowing what is out there that could be interesting for the customer is important. And then at the same time, a drawback could be if the data quality is not great when it comes, for instance, the size information of garments, so that you could be wrong if you don't help triangulate size advice and size recommendations accordingly based on past purchase behavior, on feedback that customers have given us. So that's really where we focus a lot on fixing some of the fundamental problems when buying fashion, which is super personal and very individual. And hence there where, large and good data sets are helpful on products, fashion items, etc., so that we can give actual personalized size and fit recommendations.
That's interesting. Like all three of you have echoed the fact that, people change. And as Andrew's mom says several times through the day. So how would you narrow down? Because if they're constantly changing, then the trend keeps changing at a very, very fast pace. So how do you narrow down what personalization feature you'd like to put forth to the customer? Because even if you put offers, like as an example, you obviously cannot put hundreds of offers out there. You need to narrow down specific offers to target a specific audience.
So for us, the way that we manage that is through a system that we call context. And this context is like a sort of governance for the personalization. And it allows us to kind of quickly figure out, okay, based on what the user is currently doing, or what area they're in, or the thing that they're coming to visit in the kind of live event space, what they're trying to do at this moment. And that allows us to kind of narrow down the types of things that we can show them. So understanding this context, we think, is really crucial, because without it, you're just kind of sending them something because they meet certain criteria. But context allows us to kind of frame that criteria in a really specific way.
Interesting. Okay. You all have mentioned that personalization is part of your product strategy. So now with the change in the rules and regulations, how would your strategy with personalization change with the absence of cookies? Because you won't be able to track as much as you would like.
Yeah, so we operate mostly within mobile apps. The cookie situation is a little bit different there. As I kind of touched on before, a lot of what we're trying to do is kind of really be explicit to the user about, in plain language, what we want to do with the data that they're letting us look at, and let them kind of buy into that contract kind of at face value, so that we're not trying to kind of do too many clever things behind the scenes. And all of our partners that we work with, we try to make sure that they have the same sort of transparency and clarity, so that when we're presenting stuff to the user that may rely on partner data, that this kind of consistency and transparency comes through.
That's interesting. Nadia, actually, after our previous conversations, went and downloaded Moonpig. And I have to say, I really, really do like it. And because I use the app, I wonder, like, even on the website, how would your strategy change based on the absence of cookies?
I find this a little bit of a tough question to answer, to be honest. I think it goes a little bit outside of my specialty, Pavitra. So I would probably hold off of comments just to make sure that I don't say anything that I'm not allowed to mention or that I'm not really aware. So I prefer.
Oh, no problem. No problem. And would you have anything? Because I use Zalando app all the time. I'm an avid Zalando purchaser, so I'd like to, if you have any thoughts around this.
And can you repeat the question? This is still around consent?
No, it's the absence of cookies.
Again, yeah, I think, though, I would say, asking the customer for consent, explaining very clearly the value that they get in exchange is super important. It's the beginning of a trustworthy relationship to have with a brand like Zalando. So that's again where not just asking the consent for once, but then keep reminding the customer again and again of, we are able to show you these products, etc. So it has to come through in everything the customer sees and be reminded of in a positive, non-intrusive way.
That's interesting. There's a question that's come through around this. With all of this personalization, would you say that it is still possible to create unique experiences that a user would associate to a specific brand?
This is an interesting question. Anna, do you wanna go first?
I think that is possible, and I think it's happening now. Look at Google, Amazon, Spotify, Starbucks. All of these huge brands leverage the data that we put into their systems to be able to give us personalized experiences. And we're really hooked into that at this moment. I mean, look at the things like around Google Maps and the kind of contextual awareness of what's near you. All of these things are kind of so personalized to the point now where they've become, the personalization is almost invisible, and it's just part of the core experience. And you kind of don't even think of it as personalization because that's just what it does. So I think it's totally possible, and it's happening everywhere.
But there was a part of the question that I'm really interested in what the person who asked this really means. I think it was something about personalization related to a brand. I think again, there is lots of ways of doing personalization and segmentation. I think segmentation in the first place out there. And I think many of organizations are kind of leveraging, similar approaches to that. So I'm not sure, this is what kind of confused me, the last sentence, the last part of the question. I would like to understand what that better is to make sure that we answer this question. But I think Andrew covered it pretty well as well.
Cool. And just we have one last question. So how would you safeguard against unwanted product recommendation rabbit holes? The person says, I sometimes miss the randomness and unexpectedness that often is lost with the recommendations, like the YouTube rabbit hole, you go one into the other. So how would you safeguard against unwanted rabbit holes with personalization?
This is a great question, and I think it's up to us, to the designers, to the user experience creators, to make sure that we, again, to what Anne was referring to earlier, give the rules into the hands of the customers. I am aware that actually YouTube has quite some settings where you could check out certain content from the recommendations or block certain types of content. So I think this is a great example of how you can give back that control to the users. And I think we as a product designers, as a user experience designers, we have to make sure that we give the possibility for our customers to do so.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a point where, the kind of algorithms will do what they do, but if you get stuck in a kind of really bad cycle of this is not anything I want to see, how do I make this stop? There's nothing wrong with actually allowing the user to tell you, please make this stop. If it's gonna compromise the experience by continuing, you got to give them a way to bail out.
Yeah, one way we also look at this is what are the things we want to be known for and that we believe in and that we think is worth calling out to every customer. So as an example, we offer mainly fashion, but also beauty. And we know that many customers still need to become aware of that. So just communicating more proactively additional offers like our beauty experience is something we would do, similar to sustainability and making customers aware of the sustainable assortment, but also our pre-owned offering, then highlighting through product marketing the trade-in functionality so that every customer can declutter their wardrobe if there's things there that they no longer wear. So in a way, personalization happens on product level, on experience level, but it also happens in the sense that we want to make customers aware of things that we think are exciting and could be potentially interesting to them, although they may have not thought about it in the first place.
Fantastic. Thank you, you guys. So we've come to the end of this discussion. We are almost out of time. There are more questions coming in, but we leave them for another time. Thank you, Anne, Nadia, and Andrew for sharing such insightful information. I'm sure everybody who's been here has a takeaway, and hopefully this has, and hopefully this has inspired some to start the personalization conversations within their organizations as well. So thank you again, and I'll now pass the baton back to John.